If you want to understand the boundaries of the universe, you must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. But what happens when someone actually takes these words seriously enough to build a machine capable of bending reality itself? These words, spoken by the greatest mind of the 20th century, Nikola Tesla, would become the foundation for one of history's most classified and terrifying experiments. An experiment so dangerous, so revolutionary, that it was buried beneath layers of government secrecy for decades. An experiment that would prove Tesla's theories about reality itself were not just correct, they were catastrophically powerful. Welcome to the Philadelphia experiment. But before we dive into this rabbit hole of electromagnetic mysteries and dimensional rifts, we need to understand something crucial. The man behind this experiment wasn't just any scientist. He was a visionary whose understanding of the universe's fundamental forces was so advanced that even today, nearly a century later, we're still catching up to his insights. Tesla knew something that most of his contemporaries couldn't even imagine. He understood that what we perceive as solid matter, the ship, the sailors, even our own bodies, are nothing more than energy vibrating at specific frequencies. And if you can control those frequencies, if you can manipulate the very fabric of electromagnetic reality, then you can do things that would seem impossible to the ordinary mind. You can make a warship invisible, the genesis of the impossible. The year was 1943. World War II was raging, and the United States Navy was desperate for any advantage against German U-boats that were decimating Allied shipping lanes. Imagine being a naval commander, watching your ships disappear beneath the waves, knowing that somewhere out there, unseen enemies were picking off your vessels one by one. But what if the solution to your problem was more terrifying than the problem itself? Then imagine being told that there might be a way to make your ships completely invisible to enemy radar and even to the naked eye. Not through camouflage or stealth technology as we know it today, but through something far more fundamental, by manipulating the electromagnetic field around the entire vessel. This wasn't science fiction. This was Project Rainbow, and at its heart lay the revolutionary theories of Nikola Tesla. Tesla had been working on electromagnetic field manipulation for decades. His experiments with wireless power transmission at Wardenclyffe Tower had already demonstrated that he could create powerful electromagnetic fields capable of transmitting energy across vast distances. But Tesla's private notes revealed something even more extraordinary. He believed these same principles could be used to bend light around objects, making them invisible. The theoretical foundation was sound, even if it seemed impossible. Light, after all, is just electromagnetic radiation. If you could create a powerful enough electromagnetic field with the right frequency, you could theoretically bend light waves around an object the same way water flows around a rock in a stream. But here's where Tesla's genius truly shines through. He didn't just think about bending light. He understood that if matter itself is energy vibrating at specific frequencies, as quantum physics would later confirm, then by altering those frequencies you wouldn't just make something invisible. You might actually shift it into another dimension entirely. The man behind the madness. To understand the Philadelphia experiment, you must first understand the mind that conceived it. Tesla wasn't just an inventor. He was a man who could visualize electromagnetic fields as clearly as you see the room around you. His notebooks were filled with diagrams that looked more like mystical symbols than scientific schematics, but every line represented a precise mathematical relationship between energy, frequency, and vibration. Tesla's approach to science was unlike anyone else's. While his contemporaries focused on the mechanical aspects of electricity, Tesla saw the universe as a vast ocean of energy, with every atom, every molecule, every living thing as merely a wave in that infinite electromagnetic sea. He once said that if you could find the resonant frequency of any object, whether it was a building, a person, or even the Earth itself, you could destroy it with a force no larger than a small mechanical oscillator. This wasn't theoretical speculation for Tesla. He had actually built such a device and tested it in his New York laboratory, creating vibrations so powerful that nearby buildings began to shake and crack. But invisibility was different. Invisibility required not just understanding electromagnetic fields, but mastering them at a level that bordered on the supernatural. Tesla claimed he had achieved this mastery through what he called the universal energy equation, a mathematical formula that could describe the relationship between consciousness, energy, and physical reality. This formula, according to Tesla, revealed that consciousness itself was a form of electromagnetic energy operating at a specific frequency. And if consciousness could interact with electromagnetic fields, if thought itself was a form of energy, then the possibilities became limitless. What if you could use human consciousness to guide and control electromagnetic fields? What if the human mind could become part of the machine itself? The USS Eldridge, a ship, becomes a laboratory. The destroyer escort USS Eldridge was not chosen at random for Project Rainbow. This 306-foot warship represented the perfect test platform for Tesla's theories, not just because of its size, but because of its unique construction. The Eldridge was built with a specific type of steel alloy that Tesla's calculations showed would respond optimally to electromagnetic field manipulation. But the ship itself was only part of the equation. The real breakthrough came in the form of Tesla coils, massive electromagnetic generators based on Tesla's original designs but scaled up to an unprecedented level. These coils, installed both above and below deck, could generate electromagnetic fields of staggering intensity. Picture this: coils as tall as a person, humming with electrical energy so powerful that the air around them would glow with an eerie blue-green light. Cables as thick as a man's arm carrying currents that could power entire city blocks. And at the center of it all, a control system that Tesla claimed could be operated not just by mechanical switches, but by human thought itself. The theory was elegant in its simplicity. The Tesla coils would generate a rotating electromagnetic field around the entire ship. This field would operate at a frequency precisely calculated to match the resonant frequency of light itself. As the field reached full power, light waves approaching the ship would be bent around it, following the curvature of the electromagnetic field like rivers following the contours of a landscape. But Tesla's notes revealed a deeper purpose. The electromagnetic field wasn't just designed to bend light. It was designed to shift the ship's vibrational frequency. According to Tesla's understanding of reality, everything exists at multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. We only perceive the dimension that matches our own vibrational frequency. By changing the ship's frequency, Tesla believed he could shift it into what he called the adjacent dimension, a space that exists parallel to our own, but remains invisible to ordinary perception. The crew would come along for the journey, their own molecular frequencies shifted to match the ship's new dimensional state. They would become invisible not just to enemy radar, but to the entire electromagnetic spectrum of our dimension. What could possibly go wrong? October 28, 1943. The day reality broke. The date is burned into the memory of every surviving witness. October 28, 1943. The USS Eldridge floated in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, its deck bristling with experimental equipment that looked more alien than human. Massive Tesla coils rose like metallic towers from the ship's superstructure, connected by a web of cables that pulsed with barely contained energy. The crew, 177 sailors who had volunteered for what they were told was a routine radar invisibility test, took their positions with no idea they were about to become unwilling participants in humanity's first dimensional shift experiment. But what exactly happened when the switch was thrown? The official Navy records, of course, claim the Philadelphia experiment never occurred. But the testimonies of witnesses paint a picture so terrifying, so impossible, that the human mind struggles to process it. At exactly 9 a.m., the Tesla coils began to hum. The sound wasn't mechanical. Witnesses described it as something between a musical tone and a scream, a frequency that seemed to penetrate not just the ears but the very soul. The air around the ship began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt, but infinitely more intense. Then came the light, not the harsh white light of electricity, but something altogether different. A swirling aurora of green and blue that enveloped the entire ship like a living thing. Witnesses on nearby vessels reported that the light seemed to move with purpose, flowing around the Eldridge's hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. And then, in a moment that defied every law of physics known to science, the impossible happened. The USS Eldridge began to fade, not like a photograph losing its color, but like reality itself was losing its grip on the ship's existence. First, the outline became fuzzy, indistinct. Then the entire vessel became translucent, its steel hull visible as if through frosted glass. And finally, for a period that witnesses estimate lasted between 15 minutes and 4 hours, time itself seemed to become elastic near the ship. The USS Eldridge vanished completely. But where did it go? The Norfolk incident. A ship in two places. Here's where the Philadelphia experiment transcends from merely impossible to absolutely mind-bending. While the USS Eldridge had vanished from Philadelphia, multiple witnesses at the Norfolk Naval Base in Virginia, over 200 miles away, reported seeing the same ship materialize in their harbor. But this wasn't a case of mistaken identity. The witnesses at Norfolk described the same swirling electromagnetic phenomena, the same otherworldly light, and most importantly, they could clearly read the ship's designation, D-173, the USS Eldridge. The ship appeared at Norfolk for exactly 15 minutes, during which several of the witnesses attempted to approach it by boat. What they found was even more disturbing than the teleportation itself. The crew members visible on deck appeared to be in a state of complete confusion, wandering around as if they couldn't see or hear anything around them. Some seemed to be walking through solid objects, while others appeared to be partially embedded in the ship's superstructure. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the ship vanished from Norfolk and rematerialized back in Philadelphia. But the crew that returned was not the same crew that had volunteered for the experiment that morning. The human cost. When men become ghosts. What happened to the 177 sailors aboard the USS Eldridge during their interdimensional journey is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of the entire Philadelphia experiment. When the ship fully materialized back in Philadelphia, it became immediately clear that something had gone catastrophically wrong. Of the 177 crew members who had been aboard when the experiment began, only 21 were found in what could be described as normal physical condition. The rest had suffered fates that challenged the very definition of human existence. Some sailors were found fused with the ship's metal bulkheads, their bodies partially merged with steel, as if the boundaries between organic matter and inorganic material had temporarily dissolved. These men were still alive, still conscious, but trapped in a state of existence that was neither fully human nor fully inanimate. Others had apparently been turned inside out at the molecular level, their internal organs visible on the surface of their skin while remaining somehow functional. Medical personnel who examined these sailors reported that they appeared to be experiencing reality from multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously, describing things they couldn't possibly see and responding to stimuli that weren't present in our dimension. But perhaps most disturbing of all were the sailors who had become what witnesses described as ghosts. These men appeared normal at first glance, but they would spontaneously phase in and out of visibility. They could walk through walls, but they also couldn't consistently interact with physical objects. They would reach for a cup of coffee and their hand would pass right through it, or they would sit in a chair only to fall through it moments later. The psychological impact was even more devastating than the physical effects. Several sailors who appeared physically unharmed began experiencing what they called time storms, periods where they would suddenly find themselves reliving moments from the experiment, as if their consciousness was trapped in a temporal loop that kept dragging them back to those terrifying minutes when reality had collapsed around them. One sailor, whose testimony was recorded before he disappeared entirely, described the experience. It wasn't just that we couldn't see the ship, we couldn't feel it, we couldn't feel ourselves. For those minutes, hours, we existed in a place where nothing was solid, where thought and matter were the same thing, where past and future happened simultaneously. And some part of us is still there, still trapped in that place between dimensions. But how was such a thing possible? The answer lies in Tesla's deepest understanding of the relationship between consciousness and electromagnetic fields. Tesla's hidden theory, consciousness as electromagnetic frequency. To understand what really happened aboard the USS Eldridge, we need to delve into Tesla's most radical and suppressed theory: that human consciousness operates on specific electromagnetic frequencies, and that these frequencies can be manipulated using the same principles that govern radio transmission. Tesla believed that every human being was essentially a biological radio transmitter and receiver, broadcasting their thoughts and emotions on unique electromagnetic frequencies, while simultaneously receiving information from what he called the universal mind. This wasn't mystical speculation for Tesla, it was hard science based on his observations of how electromagnetic fields interact with living tissue. In his private laboratory, Tesla had constructed what he called thought amplifiers, devices that could detect and measure the electromagnetic signatures produced by human brains during different mental states. He discovered that emotions like fear, joy, and anger each produced distinct electromagnetic patterns, and that these patterns could be artificially reproduced using precisely calibrated electromagnetic fields. More importantly, Tesla found that by exposing human subjects to specific electromagnetic frequencies, he could induce corresponding mental and emotional states. A person exposed to the electromagnetic signature of fear would experience genuine terror, even in the absence of any actual threat. Someone exposed to the frequency of love would feel profound compassion for everyone around them. But Tesla's experiments revealed something even more extraordinary. At certain frequencies, the boundary between individual consciousness and universal consciousness began to break down. Subjects exposed to these frequencies reported experiencing telepathic communication with other people, accessing memories that weren't their own, and gaining knowledge they had never learned. Tesla theorized that these frequencies were tapping into what he called the information field, a layer of electromagnetic reality that contains all knowledge, all memory, and all possible experience. According to Tesla, this field exists parallel to our physical dimension, accessible only through precise electromagnetic manipulation. Now imagine what would happen if the powerful electromagnetic fields generated during the Philadelphia experiment accidentally tuned into these consciousness frequencies. The sailors' minds would have been forcibly connected to the information field, their individual consciousnesses scattered across multiple dimensions of reality. Some would have been pulled so deeply into alternate dimensional states that their physical bodies couldn't fully return to our dimension. Others would have experienced such an overload of interdimensional information that their minds fractured, leaving them partially aware of multiple realities simultaneously. And a few unfortunate souls would have become permanently attuned to the frequency that exists between dimensions, trapped in a state where they could perceive our reality but could no longer fully exist within it. The cover-up, burying the impossible. Within hours of the Philadelphia experiment's catastrophic conclusion, the highest levels of military and government began an unprecedented cover-up operation. The surviving crew members were immediately transferred to a classified medical facility where they were subjected to experimental treatments designed to erase their memories of the event. But how do you erase memories of an experience that exists outside the normal boundaries of time and space? The answer is you can't. You can only suppress them, push them down into the unconscious mind where they continue to exist like psychological time bombs waiting to explode. Many of the survivors suffered from what military psychiatrists labeled temporal displacement syndrome, a condition where patients would suddenly and without warning begin reliving moments from the experiment. They would describe seeing their shipmates fused with steel, watching the laws of physics collapse around them, and experiencing the terrifying sensation of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The official military response was swift and ruthless. Any personnel who had witnessed the experiment were reassigned to isolated posts where they would have no contact with civilians or media. The USS Eldridge itself was quickly transferred to the Greek Navy under a classified agreement, effectively removing the physical evidence from American soil. All documentation related to Project Rainbow was classified at levels so high that even today, nearly 80 years later, most of the records remain sealed. The few documents that have been released through Freedom of Information Act requests have been so heavily redacted that they're essentially meaningless. But perhaps most telling of all is the fact that Tesla's name was systematically removed from all official records of the experiment. The man whose theories made the entire project possible was erased from the story, as if the government understood that connecting Tesla to the Philadelphia experiment would validate claims that most people were meant to dismiss as fantasy. Yet the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. And over the decades, pieces of the real story have emerged through the testimonies of deathbed confessions, leaked documents, and the persistent investigations of researchers who refuse to let the matter die. The witnesses speak, testimonies from beyond the veil, One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the reality of the Philadelphia experiment comes from the testimonies of people who had no official connection to the project but witnessed aspects of it from the outside. Carlos Allende, a merchant marine sailor who claimed to have been aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth during the experiment, provided detailed descriptions of the event that matched classified details that wouldn't become public knowledge for decades. Allende described seeing the USS Eldridge surrounded by a strange electromagnetic field that made the air itself appear to bend and twist. More importantly, Allende claimed that he and other crew members of the Andrew Furuseth experienced unusual effects themselves just from being in proximity to the experiment. Several sailors reported temporary invisibility, where parts of their bodies would fade in and out of visibility for hours after the incident. Others described experiencing vivid visions of events happening in other locations, as if their consciousness had been temporarily expanded beyond the boundaries of their physical bodies. Dr. Morris K. Jessup, a respected astronomer and UFO researcher, spent years collecting testimonies from Philadelphia experiment witnesses before his mysterious death in 1959. Jessup's research revealed that the experiment's effects weren't limited to the immediate area around the USS Eldridge. People as far as 50 miles away reported electromagnetic disturbances, power outages, and strange atmospheric phenomena that coincided exactly with the timing of the experiment. Perhaps most intriguing are the testimonies from witnesses who claim to have encountered Philadelphia experiment survivors years after the event. These accounts describe meetings with men who appeared normal at first but exhibited strange abilities. They could predict events with uncanny accuracy, seemed to know things about people they had never met, and occasionally would phase in and out of visibility when under emotional stress. One witness, a nurse who worked at a veterans hospital in the 1950s, reported treating several patients who claimed to be Philadelphia experiment survivors. According to her account, these men would sometimes disappear from their hospital beds, only to reappear hours later with no memory of where they had been. Medical equipment would malfunction around them, and other patients reported seeing them walking through walls. But what makes these testimonies particularly credible is that they were given by people who had nothing to gain from fabricating such stories. Many of the witnesses faced ridicule and professional consequences for speaking out, yet they persisted in sharing their accounts because they felt the truth was too important to suppress. The science behind the impossible, modern physics, catches up to Tesla. For decades, the Philadelphia experiment was dismissed by mainstream science as impossible because it violated fundamental laws of physics. Matter simply couldn't phase in and out of dimensions, humans couldn't exist in multiple states simultaneously, and consciousness couldn't interact directly with electromagnetic fields. But quantum physics has gradually revealed that reality is far stranger and more flexible than classical physics suggested. Modern scientific discoveries have actually validated many of Tesla's seemingly impossible theories, making the Philadelphia experiment not just possible, but almost inevitable. Quantum entanglement has demonstrated that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, and can instantaneously affect each other across vast distances. The many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that multiple parallel realities exist side by side, separated only by dimensional barriers that might be permeable under the right conditions. Even more relevant to the Philadelphia experiment, recent research in consciousness studies has revealed that human awareness does indeed generate measurable electromagnetic fields. Studies using highly sensitive magnetometers have detected electromagnetic signatures emanating from human brains that extend several feet beyond the physical body and can influence nearby electronic equipment. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness itself operates on quantum mechanical principles, existing in a state of quantum superposition that allows awareness to exist simultaneously across multiple dimensional states. Their research suggests that under extreme electromagnetic conditions, exactly the type created during the Philadelphia experiment, human consciousness could theoretically shift between dimensional frequencies. Meanwhile, advances in metamaterial research have shown that it's actually possible to bend electromagnetic radiation, including light, around objects using precisely engineered electromagnetic fields. While current technology can only achieve limited invisibility effects, the principle that Tesla proposed, using electromagnetic fields to manipulate light, has been proven scientifically sound. Perhaps most significantly, experiments in what's called quantum teleportation have successfully transmitted the quantum state of particles across distances instantaneously. While this is still far from teleporting entire objects, it demonstrates that the fundamental mechanism Tesla proposed for the Philadelphia experiment, shifting the quantum state of matter from one location to another, is theoretically possible. The more we learn about quantum physics and consciousness, the more the Philadelphia experiment appears not as an impossible fantasy, but as a catastrophically premature application of scientific principles that we're only now beginning to understand. The ongoing mystery: is the experiment still active? Here's perhaps the most disturbing question surrounding the Philadelphia experiment. Did it ever really end? Evidence suggests that the electromagnetic effects triggered on October 28, 1943, may have created a permanent rift in the dimensional barrier around Philadelphia, with ongoing consequences that continue to this day. Researchers have documented numerous reports of anomalous phenomena in the Philadelphia area that began after 1943 and continue to the present. These include unexplained electromagnetic disturbances, sightings of ghostly figures in Navy uniforms, and areas where electronic equipment consistently malfunctions for no apparent reason. Several witnesses have reported encountering men who claim to be Philadelphia experiment survivors, but who appear to be the same age they were in 1943, as if they've been trapped in a temporal loop for the past 80 years. These individuals appear randomly, often in areas associated with the original experiment, share detailed knowledge of the event, and then vanish just as mysteriously as they appeared. More troubling are reports from multiple psychics and sensitive individuals who claim to perceive ongoing electromagnetic anomalies in the Philadelphia area. They describe sensing thin spots in reality where other dimensions bleed through into our world, creating zones where the normal laws of physics don't apply consistently. Some researchers have theorized that the Philadelphia experiment didn't just bend the ship into another dimension temporarily. It created a permanent dimensional bridge that continues to allow interdimensional bleeding. This would explain why Philadelphia has become a hotspot for unexplained phenomena, and why certain individuals in the area seem to develop enhanced psychic abilities. If this theory is correct, then the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a single event, but the beginning of an ongoing process that's slowly transforming the fabric of reality in the region. The implications are staggering. An entire area where the boundaries between dimensions remain permanently weakened, where consciousness and matter interact in ways that defy conventional understanding. Tesla's ultimate legacy: the future of dimensional science. Whether you believe the Philadelphia experiment happened exactly as described or dismiss it as elaborate fiction, the fact remains that Tesla's underlying theories about energy, frequency, and vibration have proven to be remarkably prophetic. Every year, Scientific discoveries bring us closer to understanding the profound truths that Tesla grasped intuitively over a century ago. Today's research into consciousness, quantum mechanics, and electromagnetic manipulation is following paths that Tesla mapped out in his private notebooks. Scientists are discovering that consciousness does indeed operate on electromagnetic frequencies, that matter can exist in multiple states simultaneously, and that the boundaries between dimensions may be far more permeable than we ever imagined. But Tesla's greatest insight, the idea that energy, frequency, and vibration are the fundamental building blocks of reality, goes far beyond mere scientific theory. It represents a completely different way of understanding our relationship to the universe and to each other. If everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, then every word you speak, every thought you think, every emotion you feel is literally reshaping the electromagnetic field around you. You're not just a passive observer of reality. You're an active participant in its creation. The Philadelphia experiment, whether real or mythical, serves as a powerful reminder of both the incredible potential and the terrible dangers of technologies that can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. It suggests that we may be much closer to developing dimensional shifting capabilities than most people realize, and that we need to carefully consider the implications before we accidentally tear holes in the fabric of space-time. But perhaps more importantly, the Philadelphia experiment reminds us that the universe is far stranger, far more malleable, and far more responsive to consciousness than our everyday experience suggests. We live in a reality where thought and matter, mind and energy, are intimately connected in ways that we're only beginning to understand. Tesla knew this. He tried to teach it to a world that wasn't ready to listen. The Philadelphia experiment may have been humanity's first catastrophic attempt to harness these forces without fully understanding them. The question now is, what will we do with this knowledge? Will we use Tesla's insights to create technologies that benefit all humanity? Or will we repeat the mistakes of 1943 and unleash forces we can't control? The choice is ours. But remember Tesla's warning. If you want to understand the boundaries of the universe, you must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Because in the end, that's all any of us really are, unique frequencies in the infinite electromagnetic symphony of existence. And the Philadelphia experiment may have been the first time in human history that we actually learned to change the music. The question is, are we ready to face the consequences of what we might compose next?